Welcome to this episode of Ask the Guitar Coach, the only podcast where you get answers to all your guitar-related questions. If you're interested in developing your guitar skills and reaching your music goals, please send me an email at the email address ioannis@ioannis.org. That is ioannis@ioannis.org, so that I can let you know about all the different packages of elite guitar coaching and how you can get private coaching by me. Without further ado, let's go to our question for the day. 5 equipment buying mistakes guitarists make. So today we're going to talk about 5 mistakes that guitar players make when buying and using guitar-related equipment. This list is by no means complete. It's just 5 things that I really had on my mind and I see them all the time happening, and I just wanted to put it out there and see if it can help someone avoid some of those problems. So let's get started with number 1. The first equipment mistake guitar players make is when they get their first guitar and they have a budget. Let's say they have a budget of $800. Instead of buying a good used guitar, they buy a new guitar, which means they get a much worse guitar for their money. Or even worse, they say, oh, I don't want to risk a lot of money, so I'll give $500 and buy a new guitar for $500. Now, the vast majority of guitars that sell new for $500 are not good quality, so you're gonna be stuck with a guitar that's not good quality, and most people are not going to want to buy if you decide to sell it afterwards. So you really want to have to really drop the price very much, make it down to $200 in order to sell it. Meanwhile, if you spend $800 on a used guitar and then after a couple of years you decided to sell the guitar, you would probably only lose maybe $100 and then sell it for $700, which is the equivalent of renting a good quality guitar for 2 years for a total cost of $100, which is like less than $1 per week. So this would be the first mistake that guitarists do when they buy equipment, buying a new guitar instead of buying a used guitar. And let's go to number 2. The second mistake guitar players make, especially when they're beginners, is buying a big amplifier just in case they have a band in the future and they have to play live performances in the future, maybe after 2 or 3 or even 5 years when they get good. So they try to look ahead way too much and spend good money today on something that might happen in the very not near, far away future. And this is really not a good idea. The best idea would be to just practice with whatever they have decided. We'll talk later about it. And then when it's time to start having performances, at that time find a good amplifier and buy, not before that, because there's no way they're gonna know what they will need before that. And this very closely leads us to mistake number 3, which is the following. Buying a 50 or even worse, a 100 valve amplifier for home use or even for a small studio. This is a horrifying mistake because a 50 or even worse, a 100 watt amplifier is only for very big venues. Okay, not stadiums, but very big places with several hundreds of people. There's no way that if you're at home or in a fairly small venue or a home studio that you can use this amplifier even turned up to 2 out of 10. The problem is that especially valve amplifiers, to get this nice sweet sustaining sound, singing sound, you have to put them at least at 7, and there's no way you can do that in any setting apart from a very big performance place. So many players will buy a 100 watt amplifier and then this is gonna just stay there collecting dust, and it's gonna cost them a lot of money, and they're never going to use it, and then after a few years they will just sell it or exchange it for something different without never having used it. Once again, the advice is don't buy something before you need it when it comes to amplification. Let's go now to mistake number 4, and this is a mistake that is much more understandable than previous ones, and it has to do with not differentiating between your setups for practicing, for recording, and for performing. As I've said in previous videos, ideally we should have 3 different complementary music setups. One for practicing music, one for recording, and one for performing. And this goes both for guitars, like the instrument, the guitar, and for amplifiers. Like for example, I have my guitar that I like to record with. And this is not a guitar that's very comfortable for me to play, but it really sounds good when you record it. And whenever I'm doing a recording, I will take that guitar. However, when I'm at home and I'm practicing or I'm having my lessons, I will have another guitar which is very comfortable for me to play and has a nice sound coming out from the amplifier, but when we try to record with that guitar, it doesn't sound good, it doesn't have the resonance. So essentially, I have a different guitar for recording and a different guitar for practicing and playing at home. And then, if I would have to play live, I would choose again one of my guitars that would both look good on stage and would sound good, but also be comfortable enough for me to play comfortably the things I would need to play that specific gig. So you have to have different setups for those things. Now, if you're just starting on guitar, obviously this is not for you, okay? You need to just create a setup for your practicing, which means a comfortable guitar and a small amplifier that has included the different effects inside the amplifier, and this is maybe 5 or 15, maybe maximum 20 watts, no more than that. Most people and most guitar players make the mistake to try to have only one piece of equipment that's trying to do everything. So the same guitar for recording, the same guitar for practicing, the same amplifier for practicing, the same amplifier for recording, and the same amplifier for performing live. And this really does not work in the majority of cases. And moving to mistake number 5, which is not necessarily an equipment mistake, it's just a mistake that people do in relation with the equipment. Let me clarify. This is something that I've seen hundreds of times when a guitar player will sit down to practice so that he wants to develop his playing to become a better player, and instead of starting to do exercises, scales, learn licks, work on his improvisation, he will start fiddling with the different pieces of equipment he has, with the amplifier, with the wah-wah, with the different delays and stuff that he has on his pedal board instead of practicing. So this is not actually an equipment mistake, but it happens because of the equipment. While if he only had an amplifier with a couple of knobs and a basic guitar sound, he would have pretty much no choice than to either practice or just not play at all. But now with all the equipment, he has all these little choices to like fiddle around the knobs and the switches and give him the illusion of getting something done while nothing is really getting done. And this is a problem with a very big number of guitar players, and they really come and complain that they spend all time with the equipment and not becoming any better. And it makes perfect sense, because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, practicing and developing your skill set. You're just fiddling with the different knobs. So there you have it, the top 5 equipment mistakes that guitar players make. Once again, I repeat, this list is by no means complete, but these were just the 5 things that I've seen probably most often in my experience. So thanks for listening. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you on the next episode of Ask the Guitar Coach. Bye bye.